All right.
Thanks, Erin. And hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar hosted by SUNY Online Teaching on the Courses for Observation program. We're glad to have you all here, and we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat with your institution and role. My name is Aline Slating, and I am the Senior Instructional Designer with SUNY Online. I am joined here by Dr. Alex Pickett, the Director of Online Teaching at SUNY Online, along with four who will show us parts of their courses. That is Shannon Letty at the Fashion Institute of Technology, Lori Gorman at Nassau Community College, Mary Beth Sullivan at Buffalo State, and Donna Simielli at SUNY Niagara. So to get us started, I'll turn it over to Alex for an overview of the Courses for Observation program.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming to join us at your lunchtime and to talk about our Courses for Observation program. I want to welcome you, encourage you again to introduce yourselves in the chat if you just came in. And thank you to my co-pilots, Erin and Aline. I am so excited to introduce you to what I think is one of the most practical and inspiring resources that we have available through SUNY Online Teaching, and that's this Exemplar Online Courses for Observation program. This initiative was created to make excellent online course design visible and accessible to our SUNY faculty and to instructional designers in our community. It's really a simple and powerful idea, I think. We showcase examples of good online course design and let you see it in action. You can actually see it in the Brightspace DLE environment and can poke around in it, actually, see it in action. So to tell you a little bit about the program, every course that you'll see today has been nominated by their SUNY campus-based instructional designer as a model of effective online teaching and learning. These nominations recognize courses that show a strong alignment with OSCAR, and as most of you probably know, OSCAR is our own evidence-based framework for quality and accessibility in online course design. If anyone's from outside of SUNY, you may not be familiar with it, so maybe Erin can put the link to OSCAR in the chat at some point. Once nominated, these courses are reviewed, and there's a list of criteria that we ask instructional designers to review before nominating a course. But once it's nominated, we do another review, and they're copied into the SUNY Online Brightspace DLE and into our instance of it, and then they're carefully prepared for observation. So these showcased courses are free of any student information or interactions, and each instructor has given explicit permission for their courses to be shared as an exemplar. So it's quite a process that we go through in collecting and reviewing and preparing these courses, both at the campus level as well as at our level. So when you access the course, a course for observation, you're actually kind of stepping into like a museum, right, where you can look around and you can explore the structure and you can navigate and see the types of interactions that are planned and designed. You can get a sense of the assessment strategies and also a sense of the instructor's personal teaching presence, all within the Brightspace DLE environment. So kind of, like it's not the exact native environment because it's not the campus's environment, but you get a strong sense of the environment. To access these courses, a SUNY campus can choose from a couple of different ways to provide access to these courses within the SUNY DLE. So this is only available for SUNY folks who are within the DLE. So you can do it through the Discover tool, the Brightspace Discover tool. You can do a home campus enrollment, or you could ask us to automatically enroll all of the faculty in your campus. So your campus DLE admin is the one who will work with us to make those courses available in the way that you would like them to be available to your campus. Um, so just talk to your campus instructional designer or your DLE if you're faculty or other staff who are interested in these to see what the mechanism is for you to have access to these courses. So once you are in a course, you can explore it. You'll notice that they really are designed for observation and inspiration. You're going to, again, have full access to the content and the structure, and there won't be any protected third-party tools. So we've done our best to make sure to minimize and eliminate that. And you're encouraged to use whatever you see, adapt ideas, borrow approaches, incorporate best practices into your own courses. And if you do lift anything or adapt anything, we ask that you give attribution to the instructor and to the campus, simple little attribution. So, I mean, you might be wondering what makes a course an exemplar, and we wanted to have the courses in this program really reflect diversity and creativity across SUNY. And so you might see things like excellent examples of a consistent or clear organization for the course or navigation. You might see strong instructor presence and engagement or evidence of that. You might see some innovative activity or some interesting assessment approach. And there might be some learner-centered design practices that you can observe. And there might be some discipline-specific things that you might observe. So there might be some studio or lab or even STEM courses that are unique in terms of the type of discipline and content and the approaches that the instructor used in order to reconceptualize that content for the online environment. So not every one of the courses checks every single one of those boxes, but each one offers something valuable to learn from, in our opinion, some kind of a creative solution or a design strategy or some kind of a distinctive online teaching voice. And so we invite you to check them all out because there's something to learn from all of them, regardless of the discipline. Ultimately, what this program is about, from my perspective, is about our community and showcasing excellent examples from within our community, within our DLE, digital learning environment. And we really want to showcase and celebrate SUNY Online faculty excellence. We want to strengthen the design capacity across SUNY campuses. So these can be used by instructional designers in their faculty development activities to demonstrate and showcase either to faculty groups or individually one-on-one what actual courses could look like, as examples and exemplars. So, whether the instructors are new to online or very experienced, I think there's a chance to see what a selection of effective online course designs can look like. So today, we're going to feature some courses from our list. I think we have 11 or 12 courses that were selected for this round or nominated for this round. And they represent a range of disciplines and sectors. So a variety of types of institutions and disciplines. I think we have interior design, weight training, technical writing, and word processing showcased today in this webinar. But the full list includes political science, biopsychology, art history, and childhood education, and more, I think. And again, each course and instructor brings their own teaching presence, their own creativity, and their own voice to the space. So I encourage you to notice how the design decisions reflect each instructor's personality and their pedagogical approaches and how they balance structure with flexibility and how they bring interaction and care into their own online learning environments. I am so happy to welcome our four instructors that are being showcased today, and I am going to turn it over. I think back to Aline, right?
Thanks, Alex. So with that, we'll have our first presenter, Shannon Letty, share a little bit about her course at the Fashion Institute of Technology. Thanks, Shannon.
Great. So nice to be with everyone and represent FIT. It's a funny little SUNY gem that we have that focuses on art and design. Oddly, the course that I'm presenting is more about business rather than art and design, even though I'm in the interior design department, because most of our studios are not yet compatible yet with online learning, but we're working on that. So great to be with all of you, and I'm really honored to be selected to share a little bit of my experience. Full disclosure with regards to that, I'm still fairly new to our online learning platform at FIT. I've been teaching at another school outside the SUNY system for a number of years, and I've had a lot of experience with online learning, but on a different platform than Brightspace. So I'm still kind of early in this, and I'm really excited for a program like this to try to learn from myself. So I'm also been trying to engage as much as possible with my discussions with students to be consistently getting back feedback from them with regards particularly to the setup of the course, and try to employ that as I've made the course better. So that would just be one of my little tidbits, is to try to engage the students as much as possible in discussions with regard. So this is the homepage of our professional practice course. It's our students' first business course where they're learning about the business of interior design. They're always really excited about this. It's a 2-credit course. A little bit of the redheaded stepchild because they're usually very focused on their studio classes more than this course, but they really love it. And it teaches them how to make money, so that's good. So the way we have things laid out for FIT is usually in units. And we try to keep it around 7 units for our sort of our online structure. And each of the units has a different number of weeks. And I think since our students are coming off of like more of a weekly sensibility with the way course information is disseminated, what I'm presenting today is to try to help them to create and sort of follow along with some organizing principles. And since this is a business course also, I'm trying to model good business practices even in the setup of the course itself. So trying to make things as clear as possible with navigating, but all of our units basically are laid out here with whatever the topic might be. This particular course has one major term project, so that's why that gets its own module. But I thought I'd jump into one of the units and kind of show you the structure of how I have it organized to try to help the students be able to make sure they're checking all the boxes, since it's a fully asynchronous course, which I'm not sure if all of these courses that are being presented today are asynchronous. So I'm not meeting with them face to face at all. It's not a blended learning situation or a real time. So given that, I try to make the setup of every unit and every module exactly the same from unit to unit. So they start to get used to the way that they're going to see the information laid out. And even in instances where, for instance, everything starts out with an overview, I usually put the discussion after that. In this case, we had 2 discussions for the first week. That's sort of a unit-based assignment, so that's why it's under the unit 1. And then unit 1 in this case has 2 weeks. So then I lay it out in terms of a week format. So I have module week 1 and I have module week 2, and you'll see the way that I have all of the information laid out for each module is exactly the same. And even if there isn't something like, say, they don't have required reading for a week, I will still have it as a headline and just write there's no required reading. So this way they're getting into the habit of understanding how this is organized, and also that they can start to see how they can organize their own selves once they start working with clients out in the profession. So each of the module weeks starts out usually with the lecture, whatever the assignments might be, and then the required reading and a quiz. And it's the same thing down here. So just to kind of then jump in, going back to the unit overview, and I point this out to the students as kind of their roadmap for the entire unit. And using some of the tools available on Brightspace. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but sometimes I find the Brightspace interface a little bit confusing visually, and it's maybe because I'm a designer that I'm probably a little extra focused on that. But and my students are designers also, so I'm trying to really think about keeping graphics as simple as possible, or also using them to help the students navigate. So my overviews always look the same for all of the units. So again, trying to follow that same sort of pattern that they can start to get used to it. So I usually give an overview of the unit with the dates. And since there's oftentimes like there's one unit that has 5 weeks, this one happens to only have two. I always put the dates in that the students know exactly, because this will also help them to sort of self-regulate with keeping up with their work. And since our students are so used to weekly courses, that's why I've employed the week structure. I always start out with important reminders, and then again, same thing as modeled in the unit itself. I always start out with lectures, and then you'll see that I actually have links to the discussions or whatever the topic is that the students can easily find it. So if they get a little lost when they're in the course, they can always go back to the overview in order to guide them to where the information is. And then I try to use those links wherever it's necessary within the course discussion. I always start out with the topic and for my discussions, again, with a summary. Then I kind of go through the nitty-gritty of what the assignment is and always make sure that I note how it's going to be evaluated and when it's due. So again, within each of these items, I'm always trying to use the same format. So again, these are the discussions here with the very specific due dates. And then I go into the module weeks themselves. By the way, again, the discussions are usually a unit-based assignment, so they have the entire unit to do it. And then the weeks are to help them sort of keep, again, to that week kind of topic. And you'll see all of these highlights, these hot links, bring them to whatever the assignment actually is, so they don't have to go through trying to navigate to find things. They can always go back to this home page to find everything that they need. And again, laid out similarly for each one: lecture first, assignment, reading, quiz. And even if there is no reading or there is no quiz, which sometimes that's the case, I will write no reading, no quiz. So at least again, they're used to that particular format. We provide them in the first week with some PDFs of their required reading. Otherwise, that's not always a hot link for them to go to. The quizzes are all linked directly to the quiz, so they can remember to say that. And one little extra tip that I like to, that I've employed in this particular course is, in order for them to, the quizzes are an open book sort of situation that the students, whatever their reading is or whatever the content is for that week, they get quizzed on it. They're not really graded on it, but I use the quizzes as a means for them to make sure they complete the unit, because if they haven't finished the quizzes, they cannot advance on to the next unit. So there is a little bit of a skin in the game for them to do the quizzes, even though it's not a part of their grade. With these online courses, we're looking for these meaningful ways that we're interacting with the students, and a quiz isn't necessarily that for me. The assignments and the discussions are more where I get that more meaningful interaction with them. So, it's kind of a little on the basic side what I'm offering today, but based on student feedback, they've really loved this overview page because it ends up being their roadmap. And with some of the design challenges that we might have with the platform, it really ends up being helpful for organization. The one last thing I'll note is sometimes I actually will have a link to something in our Google Drive. Our FIT students, besides using Brightspace, a lot of our instructors, particularly in our department, also use Google Drive. So sometimes it's easier to have like examples of things in there that I can kind of more easily maintain or add to. So it's easy to link right off of this overview page to that. So that's what I have to present today. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but hopefully this was a bit helpful. Again, it's more on the lines of organization.
Thank you, Shannon. And as for questions, we do invite you adding them into the chat to make sure that we can kind of get through all of our presenters. And if we have time at the end, we can certainly have more conversation. Thank you, Shannon. And we have our next presenter, Lori Gorman from Nassau Community College.
Thank you for the opportunity to present my course. So my role here at Nassau, I wear a couple of hats. I'm an adjunct in the health and phys ed department, which is one of the courses I'm going to be presenting here. And my second role is an instructional designer. So when I had the opportunity, to do this, was really excited about it. But it kind of gives me the perspective on both sides as an instructor and then also as an instructional designer. So what I'm presenting today is the use of the discussion board. I'm a big proponent of the discussion board because if you look at the research, specifically with asynchronous courses, there can be this sense of loneliness in async courses. So the discussion board is a great way to establish the essential presence, and the three presences for online is instructor to student, student to student, and student to content. So, I'll explain when I show you the different boards I created and why they created it and how that does establish that type of presence. So, one of the things that is great about the discussion board is you can use it for gradable activities and non-grading. And because I feel so strongly about the discussion board, it's 30% of the students' grades. I have it, and this is regardless of the modality. This specific course is async, but I teach face-to-face courses too, and I use it weekly, and I'll explain exactly, why I do this regardless of the modality. But it's a great way to, put in information at the beginning of the semester so that if students are not familiar with the discussion board, you can put instructional information. That's what you're seeing here is how to create a thread for the students. I also post information about, being respectful and that behind every discussion thread, there is a person and, how to communicate based on, however you have to respect what other people's opinions are, what they're posting, and then be respectful of that. So I put that there. Another thing that you can do that I don't have up here is you can create spaces like Ask the Professor or, a coffee chat or something like that, so with the Ask the Professors, students can feel free to ask questions. And maybe those students that don't feel comfortable, they can always refer back to that section, ask the professor to see if their question that they had might have been asked by somebody else and how you responded. They can, if they have add-ons to that, they can do that, and then you can check back and respond. The coffee chat is great. I mean, you can label this however you want, but it would be a space where the students can communicate to one another, and then you can also monitor that. So those would be boards that would be for non-grading activities. Usually what I do, again, if it's a 15-week semester, I have one every week. I start off with kind of a low stakes discussion board where students are just asked to introduce themselves. And I find it helpful that you have some prompts, right? So have some questions so that students know, have a jumping off point. But then, hopefully they'll also add additional things beyond. But the way that you can further that too is that when students start posting, especially for the introduction, you can go, oh, nice to meet you. And, after you've read their post, maybe there's other questions that you might have. So then that's going to further the discussion. And that's really the purpose of the discussion board. All of my boards have a set, unfortunately with the discussion board in Brightspace, you can't have two due dates. So what I usually do is ask students to post original response, but to whatever I'm asking by Friday night, and then that gives 2 days for students to choose 2 of their peers. So my boards are 100, graded out of 100. They get 50% for their original response, and then 25 for each of the responses to the students. I also encourage them to reach out to any student that might have responded to them too, but that's not part of the grade. But just to kind of get, hey, just respond to people that took the time. So I mentioned that I use it for several reasons. It's a great way to introduce videos. Maybe you don't want, they're important, but they're not, you don't want to take the time up in, in the classroom, but you want to discuss it. So let the students view the video, again, present some, have some questions or, things that they might want to consider, and then you can address it in class. You can have them read articles. So what I'll do is I'll put links, again, this is a video. I'll put links to articles. I'm not sure, actually, in this one I don't have, I just have a reference, but I'll often, again, articles that I want students to, they're important, I want them to review, but it also gives them an opportunity to review that information before, we come back to that discussion in the classroom, and then they have some understanding of the content, and then, I'm including them. This is for the face-to-face, but if you're doing asynchronous, there might be a weekly, something in one of the modules that depends on this article, the information that a paper that you want them to write. So it's a nice way to present that kind of stuff. So I use it also to gauge the learning environment. I want to see if something that, was addressed in a specific module, do the students understand what it was that was presented? And this is a great way to monitor the learning environment. So you can, ask questions about that topic and then see if the students, example I'll give you is I do a nutrition label assignment. So I want to get an understanding of how the students, the knowledge base about how to convert from grams to calories. So I can see right there, and this is ahead of a paper that's going to be due. So I can use the discussion board to monitor the learning environment, and then therefore I get a better outcome, on the paper that they're going to submit. So there's many ways. The nice thing with Brightspace is YouTube is, and I guess Alex can probably tell me more about this. I know on our campus we have access to YouTube through the insert stuff button. I'm not sure if if every campus has that, but the nice thing is, and if you don't, the workaround, so you can avoid the commercials, I just actually figured this all out, is that you can actually go to YouTube and get the embed code, and then that eliminates the commercials. But the nice thing about, if it is available on your campus, then it's, first of all, it's copyright protected because you have access to only those YouTube videos that you have permission to use. But the second is the commercial thing. So, but as an instructional designer, I figured out if we go and do the embed code from YouTube and bring it in, it actually avoids the, and I'm not an IT person, so somebody else might have an understanding of why that is. But like I said, the discussion board is research supported. It does create those 3 levels of presence. So the instructor to student interaction is that it gives me the ability to go on and talk to the students, in text form, or I can put audio or video on as well. The student to student is the interaction between the students because they're going to be responding to each other. They have to respond to at least 2. And then the student to content, right? Whatever it is that I'm presenting is something that's important. It's a topic in the course. So it satisfies all of those levels of online presence, which is so essential, especially for async, when students can have those sense of or feelings of loneliness. So the introduction, they get to see, or read about the other students that they're taking, the class with, so that they don't get to see when they take a face-to-face course. So what I would suggest, if you're not, it's a fairly easy tool to use, but for some reason it does get a lot of resistance. So, and trust me, I get that with my colleagues here in instructional, in the distance ed department. If we have to present something or as faculty has a problem, everybody's like, go to Lori. But I don't, I guess because I've been using it for so many years, that I think it's a fairly easy tool to use. And it has so many benefits, so many things that you can do it. It's very flexible. And like Shannon, I find it very important that there is organization so that the students get that within the first few weeks. So I make it easy for the students to get to the discussion link because I'll embed them into the module. So, students typically know they can go to activities and click discussions. But if you go into the content area, each of the modules, you can simply pull in that discussion into, let me just see if I just go to week 1. Actually, let me go to week 2. Yeah, because this was a async course. I must have it all. Yeah, assignments. So here I bring it right into the link right into the module. So it makes it easier for the students to access it. Okay. Thank you for listening, and I hope that I hope you'll use the discussion board after my presentation.
Thank you, Laurie.
Oh, you're welcome.
And next up, we have Mary Beth Sullivan at Buffalo State University.
Hey everyone, how are you all doing today? I want to start by thanking you. See if I do this correctly. Sorry. Hopefully, you're going to be able to see everything. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, thank goodness. I want to start by thanking everyone for putting this together. Aileen and Alex for hosting all of this today. This is a wonderful opportunity. And I especially want to give a shout out to our instructional design folks at Buffalo State, because they are unsung heroes who really have helped through this process of getting to this point of being able to submit something to be an exemplar. So I'm especially thankful to Brooke and Todd and Megan, who is in charge of all the things. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about Buff State, only because most people don't know us and we're a little bit different, and it relates to what I do with tech writing. Buff State is, yes, in Buffalo, New York. We don't have snow yet. It's 154 years old. Last week, we are a Carnegie Mellon One institution. I think the important things to know are we are a small liberal arts college, basically, who recently call ourselves a university. Our students are 90% full Pell eligible. 84% of them identify as people of color. And at this point, about 60% of the people who come to Buffalo State are from New York City. So they are coming long distances. And that means as individuals, they have really different lives. Our students at Buff State, like everyone else, I think our students have really complex lives. But our students in particular, we've noticed, especially since COVID, are full-time workers. Sometimes they have a side hustle as well. They're full-time students. They're often caregivers to family members. So they just don't have time to fool around. So, which is to say that everything we do needs to always be intentional and purposeful. I have also endeavored to make sure that everything is always current, so that if it's a current event, that becomes part of our class, so that they can see the relevance both in their lives and in what they're doing. Because of our student population, we only use OERs. And I think actually we're going to hear more about that right after me. That it's also purposefully low tech. If any of you have ever been to New York, you will learn that we have terrible internet. And we also have a lot of folks who are rural and trying to do all their work from weird little devices, from their phones, from all the other things. So it's really a challenge, I think, to design a class that a senior level writer is creating from their phone. And we try to accommodate that. Part of that, then, I mention all this stuff because one of the most important parts of tech writing is audience, and knowing who your audience is and always writing to your audience. So I always call them my audience as we work, and they get to always see what's going on when I do that. Our courses are always completely accessible because that is a hallmark of tech writing, and it's also inclusive representation. And probably you have all worked to find images and things for your classes that are representative. It is incredibly challenging to do so in a way that recognizes the spectrum of identities. And it's sometimes an interesting challenge for students for us to do that. And sometimes it's just incredibly frustrating when what you would really like is just this one time not to have some white guy be the representation for the only thing that we have to choose. So as a result, we try to have images that might be lots of different things, but everything is always set up so that a person can work through each week in a succession. They can sometimes knock most of it out in a day. We always have to come back and do a response somewhere later in the week, but we also then will have a discussion overview. Because everyone else is talking about discussions, I won't take you through that part so much, but I will say that, all right, my page is doing something funny. That everything, since it's organized around student learning, we have always a flipped classroom so that they do some sort of reading or preparation before class, and all of the activities in class, so to speak, it's an asynchronous class, are preparing for whatever they're learning about. So if we're learning audience, an assignment that students had to do was revise a syllabus for freshmen, because senior level writers have a pretty good idea what belongs in a syllabus and what matters. And first year students don't always know what those things are. So they flip it. Um, and then the final thing I think is, in some ways, it's most challenging, specifically to Brightspace, is my course uses ungrading. Again, knowing that our students have so many things going on in their lives, they sometimes do need to prioritize things that are not tech writing, which is hard to believe that they might have other classes and other things going on. But I use ungrading, and I have a screenshot here mainly because you can't see this if you were to go online. Our grade books aren't included. And seeing how that's set up so you get an idea of what it looks like, I wanted to give you a screenshot because otherwise it just is blank. If you going through Brightspace, you have to do a little work to defeat this, but you can set everything up so that there aren't any points associated with your course. So basically, it becomes complete, incomplete. If they do the work, it's complete. I don't mark incomplete unless someone accidentally uploaded like the wrong file entirely. Like if it was meant for a history class, then it's incomplete. If they don't do anything at all, it just stays blank. So we don't accrue any sort of concept of zero or anything that counts against you. You just keep chugging along, emphasizing your learning as you go. Each project has a big checklist, which I think you'll be able to see them. For example, the checklist for this class takes us to a solar eclipse viewing guide so that the students are able to, you can probably guess what that looked like. We had that eclipse last year and it happened in Buffalo as a place of total eclipse. Students made a viewing guide for our planetarium to use, and then it had a checklist at the end. And from this, students were able to learn the important parts about accessibility and choosing fonts and images that are both appropriate for our campus and for professional work, and able to then create something really fascinating. I should have brought student work, but I don't think we have time to show things like that, to show you that, yes, indeed, they made really cool viewing guides. I think that's probably all the time I have, but if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them when we get to that point.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Certainly, again, you can throw your questions in the chat, or if we have time at the end, we can certainly talk more. And our final presenter, we have Donna Zanielli at SUNY Niagara.
Okay, thank you. I will have to say I was taking notes as each one of you were talking, and I already had some ideas of some changes that I'm going to be making to my courses. My courses are a little bit unusual because they're 5-week modules, and they're only 1 credit hour. So I often have students that take several of my same classes. So I, have to make sure that if they are going in and moving from one class to the next, they look the same. So I'm very adamant about making sure that the modules look the same, the layout looks the same. I try to make sure that one of the things that somebody had mentioned was the due dates on discussion. In my discussions, in the actual title of the discussion, I'll put the date that the first discussion post is due, and then the replies are due when the actual module ends. So that's something I do. One of the other things that I try to practice what I preach. I try to make sure my content is 100% accessible. And one of the things that we came across in the last few years, we've had several students that had sight issues, and they used a lot of different screen readers. And if you know that students often, they might not have JAWS, they might have a cheaper screen reader. And it all depends on, if it's something they've grown up with their whole life, or it's something new because they've gotten older and it's easier for them to have the screen read to them. I've always preached that you should give your students the original file that you started with and a PDF. So this way, it's helping your students that don't have the software yet It's also helping your students that have screen readers that work better with Word, or some work better with PDFs. And that was a big thing that we had the last couple of years. So we were scrambling in a lot of classes to make sure that that content was out there so that it didn't prevent anybody from getting into the content. One of the other things I heard some people mention about non-grading, I have a mini quiz in each one of my modules, and the mini quizzes are only worth 10% of the final grade. And I give them 2 tries on the mini quizzes, and they, on the second try, they only get the questions that they've missed on the first one. That eliminated a lot of people reaching out to me and saying, what did I get wrong? They already knew immediately. And people always ask me, well, aren't they going to look up the answers if they go back and see the different questions and stuff like that? I always refer to the quizzes inside of an online course as, if they look it up, aren't they learning it? They're reinforcing what they've learned in the module. So I tell them, in fact, I've had students say, really, I can use my book, I can use any resource, but if they're researching something, why not let them do it? Okay. Let me go to mod 2 because it probably would be laid out a little bit differently. I give an overview, and I've already wrote down what Sharon had mentioned in her overview. She has links to each part or each assignment and stuff, and I'm already going in and I'm thinking about doing that as well. So this is great to be sharing like this. I also, and I'll talk about this at the end, I also use OER. But another big thing that I was thinking as everybody was talking, every project that my students do, I have a very detailed rubric for. So the students get to see those rubrics ahead of time, and they get to see it after as I'm grading. I find that I tell my faculty, rubrics are the best thing that you can use to grade things. It lets you focus on the actual assignment and what's required, but then it opens you up for time to actually give them more feedback that's specific to what they've done. So I wholeheartedly recommend rubrics to everything that you do in your courses. So that's another thing that I do. Another big thing is, because my courses are 1 credit, I've tried very hard to make sure that there's not an extra cost that my students have to worry about. I mean, I teach computer classes, so I know a lot of faculty will use like the Pearson MyLabs, the Cengage, different tools and stuff like that. So I've extensively gone in and tried to find a resource that I can use for almost all my classes. And it's an OER, and they've done a phenomenal job. It's called gcflearn.org. And I'm glad we all kind of talked about different things on our topics today. Like I said, because of its 1 credit mod, if you use something for like McGraw-Hill or Cengage, or any one of them, they're up to a couple $100 for some of these textbooks. And if I'm asking them to spend a couple $100 on a 1 credit hour course, I don't want to do that to my students. So because it's computer courses, there are so many resources out there. If you're not familiar with this website, bookmark it, because they not only do they have technology skills, but you can see that they also have some other topics here: reading and math, core skills, work, things like that, resume building, all the soft skills. So this is a free tool, and they've actually been around for, I want to say it was back in early 2000 that they actually built this. They got a grant from the Steve Jobs, and that's what funded this. And what I love about all the tools that they have in here, I recommend that anybody who needs to learn a software program, go in and look at this. But what they do is they provide you with a practice document. They you can watch a video to go through the steps, or if you prefer written instructions, you can go through and do the written instructions. So it works for both types of learners, and whether they want to watch somebody else do it, or is it easier for them to learn something by just looking at what the screen should look like, and then they can step through. And I've actually used at the bottom, when they're all done playing with this, they can go in and do a challenge. And I have them submit the challenges, the long one, for assignments in the course. Okay. So this way, again, all the videos are closed captioned, and I've checked with them, they're up to date. I've made sure that the documents were 100% accessible. They're it's able to be screen read. And I reached out to the company recently that oversees this, and I said, I'm seeing some things in here that are not quite 100% accessible, and they responded to me literally within seconds of me reaching out to their chat and saying, tell me exactly where you're finding something and we will get it fixed right away. So not only is a phenomenal resource, they're willing to work with us to make sure that the content is accessible for our students, which I think is phenomenal. So, check it out. They have some great resources, and it's not just technology. But if you have to, like, I teach Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, but if you are having your students do a research paper, you can send them here and they can learn how to actually create that research paper, set up their title page, tell them how to set up their resources, their bibliography. So even if you're not teaching a technology course, if you don't want to teach your students technology to get them started in a project that you have in your class, you can send them here. And one of my classes, I asked them, what types of applications do you want to learn more about? So I send them here. Okay, you want to learn how to use Adobe, and I send them here. So not only do I use it in my classes, I recommend it to anybody who wants to learn a new application. Okay, so one of the other things, and I know that I tweaked a few things, and I'm going to give Alex and the group here to maybe update my course inside of the Discover, because obviously we're working towards getting everything 100%. And I ran my accessibility checker earlier, and I'm like, oh, I'm at 99. I still have that 1% that I want to fix. So I was trained back in 2014 when any course that was online was really pushed to make sure it was accessible. So I've kind of used those skills for years now, and it's something that I practice what I preach and make sure that my faculty know how they should develop it, how they should lay it out. And I will say we started with Alex's groups, the templates that they supplied us to make it easier to get started. We did do a few changes. One of the other things that I would also point out that we've added to our courses is an accessibility FAQ, and we actually added it to our template. And we've gone in and created links, and I recommend in the template to my faculty that any resource they're using for their courses, they should be checking it out, making sure it's accessible, and putting in the links to get help if there's an issue with accessibility for any product that they use in their courses. So this is something that we've added, and I would like to see that maybe when we update it in the template. So, hopefully I've given you some ideas of, some things to try. I will say one more thing that we did on our campus, and I noticed somebody had a widget for running the LI report, and I'm going to add that to our template. We have a widget for our textbooks because we now have First Aid Complete, which is what we call Wolfpack. One of the other things that we also did on our campus is we created widgets for resources for students and faculty for online learners as well, so that this is on the home page of every single course. You might not see that in the course in Discover, but I just wanted to point those out to you. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
Thank you, Donna. And thank you to all of our presenters. We have some time for a discussion, and there looks to be a good question in the chat about rubrics and creativity. Diane describes, I find rubrics limit student creativity, and they use the rubric like a checklist instead of creating a presentation on paper or using their ingenuity along with the content. Does anybody else find this? What do you do instead? So I present this question to our panel. Have any of our presenters or participants here encountered this or have ideas that could help manage it?
Since I brought it up, I'm going to mention something that because I have very specific skills that my students are required to learn, the rubrics work great. I could see if if you have something that's a little bit less structured, that a rubric could be an issue. But if you just look at it as a starting point, and actually the deeper your descriptions are in your rubric, you might find that that might be okay with what you're looking at for the limitations here. So the better written rubrics might give you a little bit more creativity in what they can do.
There's some
I would
additional.
say, oh, sorry.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
would say, I'm a interior design instructor, so, a lot of what I'm evaluating in my other classes might be considered somewhat subjective. And you're right, you don't want it to just be that we're checking a lot of boxes. So I do have like grade evaluation sheets, rubrics, that kind of thing, that kind of organize some of the key points. But I always make sure that I have an area where I have some summary points that I write to the students about, or I use voice, what is it called now, Screen Pal or something, where I'm actually giving them video messages of some thoughts that it kind of helps in terms of feedback, of some of those intangibles. So I think because I present my rubrics where there's still like points of discussion, that kind of helps to make it a little less overly structured. I don't know if that makes sense.
Thanks, Shannon, and also Donna. And there's some conversation in the chat describing can encourage creativity, obviously making the expectations clear, building creativity into the rubric, and can be focusing on skills instead of items. Are there any additional thoughts for this, or are there any other questions that we can bring up and chat about?
One of the things that I do in my course, or have done in my course, is in addition to the rubric, I have students peer evaluate each other's work, and then also self-assess. So every post will have 3 sort of thoughts related to the rubric. One is the student's own self-assessment, one is a peer evaluation from a peer that has responded to them, and then one will be my guiding assessment according to the rubric. And I really try to make the high level contribution based on the rubric something where the student, I'm asking them to make their thinking and their learning visible to me. So I'm asking them to show some sense of reflection or application or explanation, or they're defending or refuting something, they're questioning or they're analyzing something. So I try to have them stimulate additional thought on a particular issue. This is for my discussion rubric. And I give them those things not as a checklist, but to really just guide what they are presenting in their responses, and to guide that, right? To have those expectations clear, that it's not just okay or good enough to say, yes, I agree. And I think we all probably know that, right? There are sort of, not that there's anything wrong with saying, yes, I agree, but if you really want to contribute to a discussion, it has to be a little bit more than that. And to help guide their thinking, to be able to do that, because the assumption I make is not all of them may know what I expect, right? Or what I want. And that if they make an assertion, I want them to support that with some scholarly work, not just some random newsletter or thought they had or experience that they had once. You know what I mean? I want them to actually think a little more deeply than that. So they won't know that unless I tell them and unless I show them. So that's kind of how I try to use the rubric, and I guide them with the rubric and with the peer and self-assessment, and then my my note on how they did on it. So, I mean, I can definitely see how it could potentially limit creativity, but I really do think that it has to do with how it's worded and how it's designed. I think you can, obviously, also depending on the discipline and what the topic is and what the assignment is, what the actual activity is. So yeah, I'm just a fan of rubrics though.
Hi, everyone. I asked the question.
Hi, Diane.
Hi. I don't have my camera on. But I think the issue I have is that sometimes in higher ed, particularly when using something like the Oscar rubric, it becomes a requirement. Oh, you must have a rubric for every assignment in an online course. And I think they do work really well for skill-based items. Um, but I'll give you an example. I teach a course called Women in Math, and it is not an online course. But there's an assignment in it where students have to research and present on a female mathematician or a female in STEM. And I really say to them, here's the rubric, here's what I need to know about this person, but you need to present it creatively. You need to think about how you're going to share that information with us. And, some of the students look at the rubric like a checklist, and I get 5 PowerPoint slides. And I have had students who've looked at the creativity piece and done things like presented it like the eulogy at a funeral. And that's far more interesting and memorable to everyone. And I find that that works too online. Like I teach a graduate class in mathematics education, and students do some action research and present their findings. And the rubric sometimes becomes like a checklist. Okay, I told you what my question was, and I told you who my subject was, and they work down the checklist. And other students will get on and be creative and tell us a story about this problem in their classroom. And I don't like when the rubric becomes, oh, I have to put this on slide 1 and this on slide 2. It becomes more like a template even than a rubric at that point. So in some cases, I've stopped using them. And then, of course, if you're looking at getting feedback from instructional design, sometimes they will say things like, well, you need a rubric for this. And so that's why I asked the question, because I really want my students to stretch, not just fulfill the guideline. I don't know if this helps. I I appreciate everybody's feedback. It's been great. So thank you.
Diane, do you give your students examples of some of those creative submissions that you've gotten so that they could see the sort of breadth of creativity that you've experienced?
Yes.
That's great. I think that's a great way to showcase that you're just not looking for, a PowerPoint that checks each of the rubric boxes. And then also for the student that just checks the rubric boxes, do they get less points than the one who did the eulogy? Because that's how I would do it. If I'm looking for the creativity piece that's built into my rubric, and somebody who goes above and beyond would get more in terms of the points. And that coupled with an example, I think might help to support more of what it is that you're looking for. That's how I see a rubric, is it's supporting me to make sure that the students understand what I'm looking for in terms of their response in the absence of I have in the online asynchronous medium, it's just what I can write and type on a page, right? Or show, right? So I'm trying to help them to understand what it is that I'm looking for in terms of the expectations. And so the more that I can do that, the more they'll understand, what it is that I'm looking for. So
Yeah, that's helpful. I I find that I do score a student who's been particularly creative with the assignment. They receive credit for their creativity. But if you've ever worked with teacher education students, yeah, they are particularly astute at, I have fulfilled everything in column, A of this rubric.
Yeah.
Illustrate why I didn't. So it's just, it's just
I totally agree with you. My course is a master's level course. Most of it's in the education department at UAlbany, and most of my students are pre-service K-12 educators, and they are very rule driven. And I have to break them sometimes, right? Like most of the first, part of my course is helping them to understand what I'm doing. I mean, I've had students tell me, very directly, this is not, what I'm used to. This is not, the whole iteration, right? They don't want to iterate. They want to check things off a list and give me that and be done. And that's not how I teach, right? They give me something, I give them feedback, and I want them to go do it again and give it to me again. And I'm going to continue to give them feedback. And if they think that it's a one and done thing, I have to break them of that right at the beginning. The whole learning is in putting yourself out there and open to feedback. And I do a lot of peer evaluation too. And so like the first 2-3 weeks of my course is kind of helping them to understand how to learn in my class, right? Because they are very used to here's a rubric, check, check, check. I'm giving it to you. And if that's not good enough, then they're questioning why. Like I've had people go to the dean and say, what the heck?
I have not experienced that, but they, and rightfully so, right? They should ask. And I always tell them, if you feel something is, not just in the class, you should discuss it with me. So
Absolutely.
I was just looking for other ideas, and I think everyone's been basically supporting the same conclusions I have. The rubric, yes, maybe for the content, maybe another piece for the creativity. Sometimes I like to just put it up there and say, this rubric is just a guideline. I'm not going to score you exactly as this rubric is developed, but it's to help you understand the assignment. So that's work too. But I appreciate all of this, and I know we're like running out of time and people are leaving. So I just thank you and great presentation.
Diane, I put a link that is actually kind of outdated right now, but it's a link to a rubric. That's the only one I have publicly to share with you. So I just put it in there for you to see. This was my, it's dated 2009, I think. So it's old. But it's an early iteration of my blog grading rubric, just so that you can have a sense of what I do, and just as an example. For the closing of our webinar today, I know people have already left, but for the recording, I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending and spending your lunch hour with us to hear about these amazing instructors and their courses that are posted for observation. For those of you who are not in SUNY or not within the SUNY DLE, again, this session has been recorded and will be available for you to review on our YouTube channel. Maybe Erin will post the link to that so you can have a copy of that link, and it'll be posted fairly quickly. I continue to invite any of you who are within our SUNY DLE to talk with your instructional designer and to see how you can access and explore these courses for ideas and for inspiration, and to chat with others in your department or in your institution about some of the approaches and the techniques and the ways that these instructors are designing certain activities and interactions and content content in their courses. If you're an instructional designer in the SUNY DLE and you're interested in nominating any of the courses from your institution, from your SUNY institution, and you want to learn more about that, you can find details on our online teaching website about that. And then I also wanted to invite you to attend any of our upcoming fall webinars. And also for you to know, we're going to do another one of these sessions focused on the courses for observation in the spring with a different group of faculty, I believe. So stay tuned for that and check out the rest of the fall webinars that we have. And again, everything is recorded, so you'll be able to view it again if you attended and want to view it again. So again, thanks for joining us today. Thank you to all of the faculty and the instructional designers that make this program possible. I think it's your work that continues to strengthen the culture and the quality and the innovation and the collaboration that really defines SUNY Online. I appreciate each and every one of you and my colleagues, Aline and Aaron also. And my co-pilot in this project was Andrea Gilbert. Hi, Andrea, I see you there. We together worked on the nomination process and the review, which was extensive of each of the courses. The faculty and the IDs know we worked very closely with them over the course of several months to prepare these courses. So thank you to everyone. And yeah, nice to see you all, and hope to see you at our next webinar.